Hello, everyone. My name is Shane German, the music director at WYCE 88.1 FM, and we're thrilled to welcome to our virtual stream today Charley Crockett. Charley Crockett has said of his action-packed life that people think my story is far-fetched, but the thing is, I've toned it down. He certainly packed a lot of living in 36 years, and one would have to think that his life story perfectly describes the classic country songs of hard luck and the tear in your beer ethos that is passed on from generation to generation from the masters of country and blues. Or perhaps his life story reads like a classic Western that could only exist in Hollywood. Born in San Benito, a southern Texas border town that also claims Freddie Fender as its own, Charley Crockett was raised in nearby Los Fresnos by a single mother who sang the blues in her spare time. With a guitar bought at a pawn shop, Charley Crockett stepped out at a young age to wander the land, much like his relative Davy Crockett, picking up exquisite musical chops and some hard knocks along the way. His latest album, Welcome to Hard Times, in fact named after the 1967 Henry Fonda Western, is out July 31st. It mixes honky-tonk, soul, blues, and psychedelic spaghetti Western into an exhilarating and deeply personal release. Please welcome to WYCE, Charley Crockett.
They say there's a price on my head, and that I'm better off dead. But that sheriff better keep this in mind. I'll sure be hard to find. I give up so much of me. I should probably be charging a fee. You say that you don't like me and I'm wrong. I bet you're gonna love the way I'm gone. I ain't too concerned with my name, 'cause I know it won't be on my grave. But I ain't gonna hang my head down and cry, 'cause I know where I'm going when I die. Yes, I do. The bright lights shining in this city remind me of the time when she was with me. It's the same old feeling, nothing new. So I'm fixing to paint it blue. Ooh. I give up so much of me. I should probably be charging a fee. But I tell you what I'm really about to do. I'm fixing to paint it blue. Yes, I'm fixing to paint it blue. And I'm fixing to paint it blue. Lord, I'm fixing to paint it blue.
Charley Crockett, right here at WYCE. How you doing, Charley?
I'm doing just fine, man. To be honest with you, I messed that song up pretty good.
That's all right. That's all right. You look good down there in Austin.
Oh, good.
So let me tell you a little bit of history. And about 20, I get a lot of CDs that come into my office as music director. And I think 2017 or so, I got this little blue CD in the night. I put it in my, I try to listen to everything that comes in to figure out if I'm going to add it to the library here. And I put it in. I was like, oh my God, who is this? we put it into rotation, and then I would say less than 6 months later, Little GL's Honky Tonk Jubilee came in the mail. And then like 6 months later, Lonesome as a Shadow came out, and that came into and then Little GL's Blue Bonanza came in, and it was like I was getting sucker punched by Charley Crockett albums, and each one was just as good as the last. And all of our programmers are like, who is this guy? And we're just thrilled that you're joining us today. It's really been a great, you make our station sound really good the past few years, and we really appreciate it.
Well, that's awful kind of you to say those words. I'm really grateful to you for y'all for spinning me, and I definitely have put out a lot of records. I kind of felt like I didn't have no choice, I felt obligated to do that,
I mean, it's just each one is just as good as the last. And then The Valley came out last year, and you've got a new one coming out, Welcome to Hard Times. Next week it comes out, next Friday, actually.
Right.
So we've got tons of Charley Crockett here. Our listeners love it. Our programmers love it. You just really, like I said, you make our station sound really good. And we're so glad that you turn this music around so quickly. A lot of artists don't have that kind of output, and we're so glad that you do.
Well, thank you. It's I don't think it's the artists that have slowed down, as much as I think maybe the folks in the business have slowed down the releases, because, if you was signed to a label 50 years ago or 60 years ago or something like that, you would have been contractually obligated to record 3 or 4 records a year.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it's the business that's changed. And so if I seem prolific, I guess maybe I'm just living in the past trying to keep up with the true legends,
Mm-hmm.
So
and you really do you do pay homage and tribute to the legends, like no other current artist that I know of. I mean, your stuff. Growing up down there in Texas, you were in a border town. Tell me about your childhood down there.
I was born in Cameron County. That's in the Rio Grande Valley. It's the southernmost county in Texas. So if you think of Texas as the bottom tip of it, where the Rio Grande comes out at the Gulf of Mexico, I was born about 10 minutes there from the bridge in Brownsville. And, it's an isolated place. I have referred to it before the last couple of years as, in America, when it comes to country music and roots heritage, a lot of people kind of naturally understand the significance of, the Appalachians and kind of that traditional and the cultural mixing that's created that. But where I'm from is much more regionally isolated, and it's predominantly Latino, like 90-something%. So it's not something that necessarily registers in the American consciousness, to the level that extent of places like the Delta or Texas as a culture, rather than kind of that region, And Texas is a big place, but we lived off an old rural route. I've been described as being raised in a trailer park, but really it was just trailers kind of dotted around the agricultural landscape in between orchards and sugarcane and cotton fields, that type of thing. And we moved up to Dallas when I was getting into school, like around 9 years old or so. And my grandma my grandmother lived in that trailer till I guess I was about 24, 25. She was the last one to move up out of there. And then I moved on to Dallas and then New Orleans and then became, a transient
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. But, you know, the places that you're from shape you. And I think as the older you get, the more, even if you're trying to run for them, it becomes your identity. And when it's a particularly singular place like where I'm from in the Valley, my life has always been in transition. I've always picked up the pieces and started over again and again and again. Transformation uh, is has been who I have. That's my life, and
Mm-hmm.
because of being from such a unique rural place, I think I've always lived there in my mind. And as I've gotten older and times have been hard, and life is a series of mountains and valleys, and I find great comfort in the memory or the vision or the image that I have of my birthplace that lives in my heart and my mind.
Yeah, I grew up in the Ozarks.
Oh wow,
Uh,
yeah. Well, then you know.
yeah, and I've traveled the world. I've lived in LA. I've lived in DC. I've lived in New York City. I've lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I've lived a lot of places. My dad was in the service, so we moved a lot. And I still have that wandering spirit, like to pick up and move. Um, but I always carry the Ozarks with me,
Mm.
which is why I think I resonate so much with your music. Just as a fan and a listener, it reminds me of my childhood, growing up watching Hee Haw.
Yeah.
You know, um, visiting my great grandparents, out in the Ozarks, and um, being raised on that tradition of country western um, and the roots music that shaped my childhood. So I still carry that no matter where I go. The Ozarks are always in my soul. So I feel
Yeah.
you. I feel you on that. What I know, you got your guitar. You moved to New Orleans. You started busking. You move it. You headed on up to New York City. You were in Europe for a while, busking. You went to California for a while, worked on farms and communes. Why? What is this wandering spirit in you? Like, what do you think that is?
Well, I think a lot of it's in the genetics, maybe. Um, Maybe in the blood a little bit, because I definitely, I had that in me from as early as I can remember. That desire to go. Um, but that maybe by itself wasn't enough, and it was also circumstances in my life
Mm-hmm.
that compelled me to go in this direction. So um, I got in. I fell into some pretty outlaw stuff with my
Mm-hmm.
brother as a young man, and grew up real fast because of that. And any illusions that I had about any kind of normal life, those were just that those were nothing but fantasies, and truth is stranger than fiction sometimes. And I got in a lot of trouble with my brother, and he went to prison. Had I not really, really, if not just for the grace of the Creator, I would have been in prison with him.
Mm-hmm.
And that really affected my life. And it it kind of forced me into being an outsider.
Mm-hmm.
And the more outside of society you are, I think the more likely you are to uh, move between, or just travel.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, the things that I had seen by a young age, I just didn't have any. I just didn't have any faith in. I didn't have any faith in the game as the way it was set up to be played. You know, I guess I saw behind the veil. I think I saw something maybe a poor boy from South Texas wasn't supposed to see.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I just was unsatisfied with my life and just quite literally walked away from it, just on the highway.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did that and I placed my faith in other people, I found that folks was really willing to help me out and take me in on my journey to play music, to sing my song, to tell my story. And that's how I ended up, living on farms and relying on the kindness of strangers and hitchhiking on the highway and riding trains with other traveling musicians. And, I played in the subways and in the subway cars in New York City. And I did that in San Francisco, and I did stuff like that in Paris, France, Copenhagen, Denmark, all these places.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't really say, it's like, maybe this is a bit out of context, but it's like somebody who says that they're not their brother's keeper is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We are the keepers of our brothers and sisters. We do need and rely on each other. We're not this idea that every person is an island unto themselves. I know it feels like that in your mind. It's felt like that in my mind, in my isolation.
Mm-hmm.
In the hardest days when I was standing on a street corner, and even in the middle of this pandemic, I have dealt with, deep senses of isolation, and depression. But I always have to remind myself that, everything I've got has been based on people lending me a helping hand in my journey to sing songs.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't. The older I get, the more I realize that, as much as things change, they stay the same, even if you never stop moving.
Yeah, you've certainly, I mean, in 36 years or however long you've been on this earth, you have certainly seen some things and suffered some pretty significant losses and had to deal with some pretty hefty blows, like mentioned your brother. For people that don't know, they can look up the situation there. Have you been able to reconcile with him?
He got out of prison a few years ago, but we have not spoken. No, I haven't spoken to him in probably 12 years. But he's following what I'm doing, and
Mm-hmm.
I know he's following what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, the new album, Welcome to Hard Times, comes out next week. We're really excited. We've already added the single here at the station. I looked up because I read that it's based off the Henry Fonda Western. The movie plot online for this Western, which I think is striking, says a sociopathic stranger all but destroys a small hardscrabble town, but the mayor convinces its survivors to stay and rebuild. You've also said that this particular record is for folks that feel like everything is fixed, and if you're playing a rigged game, you're right. It seems like all the cards are marked in advance. They are, but you got to roll the dice, even though you know that they're loaded. Tell me about this new record. How was the production of it? You worked with a new producer for this one, right? You worked with Mark Neal for this one, right?
Yeah, I sure did. Yeah, Mark for me is if you were to look at those great visionary producers that made country music the high art that it once was in the classic era, I would say he's the closest thing to that. He is that in this era, and I speak from experience because I know a lot of producers.
Mm-hmm.
They're all real talented, but Mark was speaking my language, and he called me. I think maybe people had been telling him about me for years, and I had been hearing his name. It was like a name that was whispered, but not too loudly, because if you said his name too loudly, you might skip the people that were talking to you and go to the source. And that is eventually what happened, is that, we got on the phone and he said, "Hey, I want to make a dark 60s country record. I don't think anybody can do it but you. And I said, well, I was hoping that you'd call me and say that.
Mm-hmm.
And that set me on the course we set the intention down, Shane. And I'm not somebody I'm not opposed to taking direction, but I don't take direction from folks that ain't in a position to tell me what's what. And that can be a difficult thing in this era, because nowadays everybody that is a recording artist is a producer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everybody that's a producer, you know, is the second coming or whatever. You know, and a lot of it's smoke and mirrors and marketing, and a lot of people claiming this, that, and the third without evidence. And you know, that says a lot about America in 2020, I think. But when I started writing that record, we was talking about all of these things, about my journey. You know, I'd never felt like anybody that had approached me in the business actually cared about me in terms of my actual journey or what I was capable of. A lot of people just look at me from a distance, see a song and dance man that's capable of singing lots of kinds of music.
Mm-hmm.
And that's as deep as they look at me. But Mark, being a poor sharecropper son from rural Georgia who built himself up in this business from the late 70s to today, I think we saw ourselves in each other. And that allowed me to reach deeper into myself than I ever had to write these songs. And I wrote them all in about a 2-month span after we started talking about making this record. And when I wrote the song Welcome to Hard Times, I knew right away that it would be the title track or whatever, you know, we collected. And it ultimately ended up being these 13 songs. And when we got in the studio, they just, you know, the creator must have known I was on the right course, because they just came together and we recorded a record that I look back at now and I have a hard time believing that I was able to lay down, you know. And I attribute that to the guys in the studio with me, my own journey, the things I've been through my life, and my relationship with Mark Neal, being able to help me paint that picture.
Well, we're really excited. Do you mind if we hear another song from that record?
Oh yeah, you want to play one?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. See if I can get this one right. You had me nervous on the intro, so I messed up a verse or two.
Sorry about that.
No, that's my fault. It was just, you were so complimentary, I got embarrassed. Here's a song called Poplar Tree. I'm holding my head up. I'm not gonna cry or tell them I need her and that without her I would die. I'm not gonna argue. They won't listen to me. I'm just gonna stay right here under the poplar tree. Let me tell you a story. It happened this way. It was born out of longing in a man that's gone astray. I've been to the valley in the shadow of death. I've crossed many rivers wearing a scar on my chest. Can I outrun my heartache? A man he sure can try. I gave my all to that woman, then she turned around and said goodbye. I was in a high desert, Del city was in town. That's when my luck turned south. This old boy started showing out. He killed the clerk and a young girl who was only standing there. He looked at me real peculiar with the bullets flying through the air. I lit out in a hurry. He went out in a hearse. Heartbroken and wanted. Couldn't tell you which one of them is worse. He must have been real important, 'cause his posse caught up to me. I was holding my head up when they hung me from a poplar tree. Yes, they hung me from a poplar tree.
Poplar Tree from the new album Welcome to Hard Times comes out next week. What do you think we need right now during these hard times?
We need truth, man. We just need honesty. You know, honesty is the simplest thing, but it can be the hardest thing for a human being to look in the mirror and be truthful. And I think that that's what's going on in 2020. It's the year of clear vision, and clear vision isn't necessarily comfortable. Sometimes it can be painful to see, you know, but courage and integrity can allow somebody to be honest about what's going on, and I'll just leave it at that.
Well, Charlie, we really appreciate you joining us today here at WYCE. We're really looking forward to the new album. We want you to hang in there. We know this whole pandemic is kind of throwing a curveball in a lot of our favorite musicians during this time. But just so you know that we'll keep the music playing for you here in Grand Rapids, and just keep doing what you're doing, because we really appreciate it.
Oh, the pleasure belongs to me. And I'd just like to say, we didn't walk all the way to the River Jordan just to turn around when we got there, and folks just got to remember, it ain't always pretty, but it's beautiful. And I do love the land that I'm from, that gives me the right to criticize it, but I can equally love it too. And I just want to thank you and everybody at the station for playing me, and I'll be twice as good next time.
Well, we look forward to having you back. You take care, all right?
Yes, sir. You too.
All right. Thanks, Charlie.
All right, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.